Welcome to Momming as a Millennial, the podcast where we explore the intersection of tradition and modern parenting. Have you ever felt overwhelmed trying to balance being a mom with your professional aspirations, all while dealing with side-eye from your parents who think you're doing it wrong? Me too. I'm your host, Christine Gerizzo, a journalist, blogger, and proud mama of 2 young children. I'm so glad you're here with me. Together, we can navigate the complexities of millennial motherhood and find what resonates with our true, authentic selves. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of Momming as a Millennial. Today, we are talking about hormones. This is, the force within us that changes throughout our life's journey, especially in certain life events like puberty, being pregnant and having a baby, or menopause later on in life. But I am extremely excited to talk about this topic because I think hormones are super complex and it could be very confusing. And to join me in this conversation is Teneika Gravely. She is a board-certified family nurse practitioner and certified in bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. She founded Tag Family NP to help those who are struggling with weight challenges, hormonal imbalances, and cognitive issues. I hope I did that justice.
You did.
Welcome, Teneika.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
This is going to be a great conversation. I was hoping we could kind of start off with you explaining a little bit about your background, how you kind of came to do this work, and like what your passions are about this.
Yeah, so I was in Western medicine probably for about 15 years when I became a nurse practitioner. And my goal for becoming a nurse practitioner was actually to focus on women's health because I saw throughout my healthcare journey, even my own personal journey, that women's symptoms were just constantly being overlooked, ignored, swept to the side. Women would come in with similar symptoms and say, oh, you're just tired or you're just depressed. They give them a depression medication or something for anxiety and kind of ship them out the door. And I'm like, hold up, something's going on here. And then I was introduced into the world of functional medicine, where you're taught to get down to the root cause of actually what's happening, to address that cause so that you're not only resolving the symptoms, but you're actually fixing the problem. So you're not band-aiding anything.
Right.
And I got really excited and I, went down this rabbit hole and I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta get into this. So that's when I started Tag Family NP because I really wanted to just help women feel like themselves again, help educate them, help them understand why they're feeling, what their body's actually going through, and how we can help make them feel better.
That's amazing. And it's so true. I mean, I've read a couple books actually about how women are just not taken seriously when they bring issues to their doctors. And they're almost like, I've seen so many stories about them being gaslit about, oh, you're really not feeling that. And like you say, here's some antidepressants. See you later.
Yep.
So that's amazing. That gives me goosebumps. So because this is a podcast for millennial mamas, I thought it would be fun to start the conversation around the hormonal shifts that occur when you're pregnant and then you birth a baby. I have said this before and I'll say it again. I think carrying a child, growing a child in you, and then giving birth to them is such a traumatic experience. And I do not think it's viewed as trauma. And I don't think that women are given the credit that they deserve to go through that and honestly, not die. It's a big deal. So I would love if you could talk about hormonal shifts that occur during those times, being pregnant, giving birth, and then, if there's things that we could do or tools that we can provide other mothers to better navigate these challenging times in their lives.
Yeah, so pregnancy within itself is like a hormonal roller coaster, right? Your estrogen and progesterone skyrocket. You're just filled with oxytocin. Your cortisol is kind of doing its own thing. Then after birth, what happens is all these hormones come crashing down. So no wonder you're feeling exhausted, not, feeling like yourself. Things that you can do to help that is all supportive. So you definitely want to make sure, you're taking in your protein, your healthy fats. That's going to help with your hormone balance. magnesium, vitamin B12, that's going to help with mood shifts. You want to make sure that your blood sugars are regulated because that's going to help prevent those crashes. And you definitely want to have a support system because you're not meant to go through this alone. Unfortunately, some people do, but you're not meant to go through it alone. Definitely delegate wherever you can. Have someone cook your meals, have someone wash your laundry, have someone clean the house for you because you deserve that time to spend with your baby and you deserve that time especially to spend with yourself and to recover properly.
Yeah, you're right. It is not meant for one person. And I am so grateful that I had a support system when my babies were little and that helped because I look at some people and my heart breaks because I don't know how I was overwhelmed and I had help. Like, I don't know how you could do it on your own, honestly. It's sad.
Yeah.
So, mommy brain, I know this comes up a lot. Women become more forgetful or maybe a little spacey when they're pregnant. I remember when I was pregnant with my first and something would come up and maybe I didn't know the answer and it was immediately like, oh, well, you're pregnant. You have mommy brain. I'm wondering, to some extent, I feel like that might have been true, but I'm not really sure like the science behind all that. So I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on that?
So mommy brain is 100% real. It's not about lack of sleep because that's what some people tell you. Oh, you're just tired, just rest. Pregnancy actually kind of redesigns your brain, right? So what happens is gray matter decreases from areas of, doing things for yourself. And it increases in areas of nurturing. So what does that mean? That means that your brain is actively disconnecting from things that it thinks isn't that important so that you can hyper focus on taking care of the baby. It's more of an adaptation as opposed to brain fog, but that's just the way it comes across. Progesterone and oxytocin also play a role. So although you're more emotionally, sound, you can still have those periods where you're just not as sharp as you used to be. So little tasks like, oh, where did I put my keys? Or I just have the remote in my hand and it's still in your hand and you're looking for it. Those things, can definitely happen. It's all about hormonal shifts, hormonal imbalances, but definitely mommy brain is 100% real, but that's the science behind it. Eventually, as, time goes on or, you get your hormones balanced and things kind of regulate, then, you kind of push past that period. It can happen pretty quickly for some, but if you're really imbalanced, it can go on for weeks or months after birth.
That's interesting when you say gray matter. So we're talking about the actual brain.
The brain.
And pieces of the brain are like disappearing.
So science shows that it kind of just shrinks.
Okay.
And those signals that were going to that area of the brain is now more focused on nurturing.
Okay.
So you have this heightened sense. If you may have not even noticed it in yourself, but if you see a new mom, they're like hyper focused on their baby.
Yeah.
They're getting things ready for the baby. Everything is about the baby and they kind of just forget about self-care a little bit. They may not focus on themselves as much.
Is that nesting? Like when women nest?
It's similar to nesting.
Okay.
So that's just how our bodies are designed. And then, like I said, eventually as things balance out, hopefully it shifts back. It happens for some quicker than others.
Yeah. That's so interesting. And I'll include this article in the show notes, but I found this article a long time ago from The Guardian. And I just remember I was like, I'm going to bookmark this because it's going to come up on a podcast episode someday. And it was talking about, it was a study that captured real-time changes in the human brain during pregnancy. And I was reading something about like the gray matter and it was a little bit above my understanding, but that was a really great explanation of it. And I think it did mention something about the mental fog and memory shifts and being emotionally tuned in. Just looking at my notes here. Heightened intuition and bonding. It says some changes stick around. So some of these shifts last for years after birth, which might explain why many moms say they feel like a different person.
Mm-hmm.
So is that kind of what you're saying? Like the gray matter?
Yeah.
Like
So
has to,
some things, well, so just take, for example, when you're a mom, you become more of a nurturer.
yeah,
Most women are nurturers, by design
yeah,
anyway. But when you move into that phase of becoming a mom, everything becomes about the baby,
yeah.
right? You kind of leave your husband to the side a little bit. And like I said, you're not focused on yourself as much. And that's just
Yeah,
the way we're designed.
yeah. Now that makes sense for sure. So then next, so you're pregnant and then you have a baby. So the postpartum piece of this, and this was really interesting because I journal a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so every year in January, I usually write down my goals for the year. So not like really resolutions, but like my yearly goals. And recently I was looking back at some of this stuff, and it was really interesting because right around when my second child, it was in the 2 and 3 year mark after she was born.
Mm-hmm.
So around those times in my goals, I was using language like, I want to be more present with my children and remember to have fun with them, remove obligatory thoughts of being with them, and then trying to do more things like going to the museum and parks and day trips, push through the exhaustion and try harder to create memories for them. And I wrote too about, it's funny because as I'm like reading this, I was like, it all kind of like flooded back to me, and it was stuff I had clearly blocked out.
Right.
But I wrote also about being drained all the time. And this kind of makes me sad, counting down the hours until I was putting them back to sleep so that I could be alone. And even like from my husband, like just having that break from being needed and just being by myself. And it was a struggle to get up in the morning and just have that, I don't even know how to put it. It was like that constant necessity of support from everybody around me. And just, I think reading this now, I'm like, wow, that was probably some postpartum depression. But because you hear depression in the name, at the time I was like, I'm not depressed. Like, I'm just adjusting to being a mommy. Like, this is just how it is. But I think clearly I was struggling with something that I was not even aware of until recently. Does this resonate at all with what you hear from your clients?
Yes, definitely. So usually most people think that when you're having these feelings, it's just about being a new mom and adjusting and, just getting used to this new life that you have, taking care of this little human. But it's hormone imbalance. And I know I'm saying that a lot.
That's why we're
That's
here.
my answer to every question so
Hormones.
far. But it truly is. It's about hormone imbalance. And when those hormones don't recalibrate, especially when you're going through things like chronic fatigue, stress, nutrient imbalances.
Well, yeah, because you're not eating right, because you're taking care of humans.
Because you're not
Yeah.
focused on yourself like you once were. It's about someone else now. And that's another thing too. Moms have to learn. It's almost like in an airplane, when they say when the masks drop,
So true.
put the mask on yourself first and then everyone else. We have to take that advice into our own life.
Yeah.
Because as moms, we want to make sure everyone else is all good. And at the end of the day, we're the ones exhausted, running on fumes. And we kind of suffer from that mentally, physically, emotionally. And eventually that's going to spill over. And our children are going to pick up on these energies that we're giving off, our spouse, our partners.
Yep.
So things that you can do is you want to make sure that definitely your thyroid is optimized. Usually that's one of the things that's overlooked after you have a child. Thyroid is a huge hormone that doesn't get the credit it deserves.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever been brought up to me.
So you want to get checked for hypothyroidism. And when you get checked, usually they only check 2 labs. No. There's a panel.
Okay.
And this full panel should be checked. And you should also have thyroid antibodies checked as well.
And that's just a blood test?
That's a blood test.
Okay.
The other things you want to do is make sure you're optimized with vitamin B and that your iron is optimized. And the other thing, obviously, is just nutrients. So, your vitamin D, your magnesium, things like that. Once you're optimized, you feel a lot better and you have that hormonal support. So if you're struggling internally, you're not getting the rest you need, you're stressed out, things are piling up, you're running on fumes, it's just going to continue to get worse and it's just going to be a domino effect. So that's definitely one thing, especially new moms.
Yeah.
If you think about it, you don't get labs drawn. I mean, you get labs drawn in the hospital after you give birth. But your postpartum appointment, no one's drawing labs to check to see how things are going. And you're kind of just told whenever you do say you have symptoms, oh, you just need rest.
Right.
Oh, you're tired.
Which is not possible with a newborn.
So that's just one of the biggest things. Just advocate for yourself, knowing what it is you need so that you know what to ask for.
Yeah.
And if that's still an issue, just come and see me.
I would have never have thought to even bring up thyroid to my doctor.
A lot of people overlook thyroid all the time. They overlook cortisol all the time. They overlook insulin resistance all the time, inflammation. The list goes on and on. These things are just a simple blood test. Your cortisol, actually, if you want to check cortisol properly, it's an at-home saliva test. It's a 4-point cortisol. So you're actually spitting in a little tube, once when you wake up in the morning, then at noon, then at 6, and then at 10 o'clock at night. So the whole point of that is we want to make sure your cortisol is rising the way it's supposed to, and then it declines the way it's supposed to. But we want to see that peak in the morning because technically when you get up, you're supposed to hit the floor, hit the ground running. Usually we're not running, we're rolling, right?
Totally.
Rolling to the coffee pot and trying to get things figured out that way. But that's what we want to make sure you have that cortisol spike and it comes down nicely so that at night, it kind of shuts off. Well, it doesn't technically shut off, but it goes low and then that kicks your melatonin in so that you can have a restful sleep. If your cortisol does not have that curve that we're looking for, that leads to chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation leads to cardiovascular issues, leads to dementia, Alzheimer's, joint pain, things like that. So we definitely, in functional medicine, look 10 steps ahead and not just what's going on right now.
Yeah.
So,
I'm glad I do journal because looking back on how I was feeling then, I can't fathom feeling that way now. So clearly I was going through something and I didn't have the understanding or the language to know what to ask for. And again, just thinking, oh, I'm just a new mom. I'm supposed to be exhausted. I'm supposed to be, giving everything I have to this baby. And then at the time, I had a baby and a toddler. So that's just a lot of fun in and of itself. But
so you were burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah. And like I say, even with a supportive partner, I mean, it still didn't.
Yeah, it's hard.
Because, I was looking up some symptoms for postpartum because they say that it's not the same for each woman. I mean, everybody experiences something different. And one of the bullet points that I put down here is racing thoughts and obsessive worries. And I remember with my first, even when my husband was taking care of him, on his shift or whatever, when we were both off of work, I couldn't even go upstairs to take my nap. I had to nap on the couch where they were because I was like, I can't even be less than an arm's length away from this kid because I don't know what's going to happen. And it's I trusted him, but did I really? But now reading this, I'm like, oh, that was probably a little postpartum. Everything was out of whack and I had no idea.
Yeah. And that's the thing with postpartum depression, there's heightened anxiety. If you have things like intrusive thoughts, or if you're just not feeling like yourself, if you're extremely exhausted and you kind of got to crawl to get, from one room to the next, those are all red flags. So those should never be ignored. But anxiety, that's not surprising that, obviously you love your baby.
Yeah.
But
that's extreme.
there's a healthy, right?
I recognize that. That is extreme.
Like I said, it depends on the individual person. Some women have it for a few weeks and it kind of, dissipates. Some women, it can go on for months. And unfortunately, for some, it goes on for years. But it just depends on how bad their hormonal imbalance is.
Yeah, and I made a comment to my friend a while back. And I said, I'm finally starting to feel like myself again, in all aspects of life, not just about being tired or being overstimulated or whatever with the children. But my daughter was 4. So I was 4 years out from giving birth. And I'm like, oh, I'm starting to feel like how I used to feel. This is weird.
Time.
Yeah.
To not feel like yourself.
And I didn't realize it till I was past it.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I feel good. This is what it feels like. I don't remember.
And it's sad because you would think that would be something that's automatic, that we just automatically look into. Hey, let's make sure you're optimized. Because when you have that baby, like I said, all your hormones are skyrocketed. And as soon as you have that baby, everything just kind of plummets, right? Look how much blood you've lost. Are you suffering with anemia now?
Right.
You're not probably taking in the same amount of nutrients as you did before. A lot of women aren't even educated to know to still take their prenatals after they've had their child. So it is a lot of just not enough education being given,
Yeah, and even when I went to the doctor for my postpartum visit or, my yearly checkups after that, she would ask how things were going. I'm like, oh, they're fine.
Yeah.
Because I thought they were fine. Yeah.
Oh, how you doing? Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Exactly. You're right. I didn't know what to say and she didn't ask the right questions. So how was I going to get help? Yeah, that's really interesting. So I feel for women and a lot of, the other pieces, deep sadness and hopelessness. I didn't experience that, thankfully, but that is really tough to have to deal with.
It is. I would say, too, not only should you know what to expect, but those around you should know because you're going through it. So you may not entirely recognize everything that's going on, right?
Yeah.
But someone who's been around you every day or just frequently knows oh, something's not right. Something's off. And they need to know the right questions to ask you. And not just the general, oh, how you feeling today?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm tired. Oh, okay. You get some rest.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll help you do this so you can go take a nap.
And that's usually the end of the conversation. And you're just still stuck there okay, what now?
It's our partners need a checklist to ask specific questions.
They should ask, hey, are you getting enough sleep? What did you eat today? How are you feeling as far as, emotions? Do you feel happy? Are you sad? If they notice, have you been irritable? Even asking serious questions. Do you feel like hurting yourself? Do you feel like hurting the baby? Do you feel like hurting me?
Well, I think that's the only thing that they told us. When we went for our pre-baby class or whatever at the hospital, that's what they focused on. If you feel like you're going to hurt yourself or the baby, then get help. But there was no talk about anything else.
Yeah. Even, like I said, if you're not feeling like yourself and you're not feeling like yourself for weeks, especially months, that's a red flag.
It's hard to know that you're not, though.
Yeah. That's true. But I would say if your routine, and obviously your routine is going to shift because you have a newborn, but if you or people around you, and that's when I'm talking to mostly the people that are around you, if they're noticing things, if you're more moody, if you're raging over little things, if you have extreme anxiety, if you're overly fatigued. Now there's, I'm tired, there's fatigue, and then there's exhaustion. So are you exhausted? And are these things happening way past your postpartum period of, that 6 weeks? Or are they not getting better? It's not even that it has to completely resolve because some people go past that 6-week mark, but is it not getting better? Is it getting worse?
Right.
those are things that people around you definitely need to be aware of. And then there's things that they can do to help, take some things off your plate, cook dinner, wash clothes, clean up, birth the baby, if you're nursing, So there are things that they can do to take things off your plate because you feel like you have to do everything. And not only everything for the baby, but the things that you used to do for your spouse, because now you're feeling like you're neglecting them and you don't want them to feel
such
neglected.
A real feeling.
Yeah. And then sometimes it's unfortunate, but they feel neglected.
Yeah.
And then they'll project that on you as opposed to saying, hey, what can I do to help support you? So those are definitely conversations that need to be had. I think these conversations need to be had before you're planning pregnancy.
Right. Oh, totally.
That's when those conversations need to start. And they need to be ongoing conversations throughout pregnancy and then obviously after.
Yeah. And I think in hindsight, looking back, I stopped showering, so it was like I would go a week or 2 weeks without taking a shower and I would forget to eat. And sometimes I still do, but my husband is better now about checking in because he thinks I'm the only person in the world that could forget to eat. And sometimes he'll text me like, did you eat today? I'm like, oh, no, okay, I'm on it. So, but recognizing that and then being able to help, but the not showering thing, I don't think either of us thought anything of it. It was just oh, I'm tired and I'd rather do other things than take a shower. But I think that was definitely an issue.
And even with sleeping, are you sleeping longer than usual? Because that's another sign of depression. If you stop caring for the baby, if you went from being an extremely clean person where you're just constantly cleaning and now the house is just in disarray and you just don't care, that's a change.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I said, there's healthy changes where you're like, oh, it's just things kind of just thrown all over the place. I'll pick it up later.
Yeah.
But then there's hoarder change where you're like, oh, this hasn't been touched in a while. So let's,
You're right. And the not caring piece about it. Because if you're like, oh, yeah, I know I need to do that. I'll get to it. Right. Or the whatever. Yeah. It's a very different mindset. Yeah, that's interesting. What about matrescence? So I feel like I've been seeing this all over the place lately. And I was kind of wondering what the difference between that and postpartum is. But I was putting it into my Word doc and it was flagged as spelled wrong. I was like, how is this a new term? What? So I'm just curious, if you could shed some light on that.
So there is a difference between the two.
Okay.
So with matrescence, it's basically just you're transitioning into motherhood. Some people view it as, holistic mind, body, spirit.
Oh, okay.
Some people look at it as, someone who's going through puberty. You know how you're entering into this whole new world.
Yeah.
You're just trying to figure everything out. So they look at it from that viewpoint. But that's pretty much just what it is you just entering into this new phase of life. Postpartum is just 6 weeks after the birth of the baby, and then it ends. As to where that doesn't end, it kind of just evolves because you're forever a parent
right
now. So there's no end point to that. You're just kind of evolving in this new role in life. So that's the difference between the two.
Yeah, it's more of a transitionary period. And that's funny that postpartum is considered the 6 weeks when the effects of it
can last
much longer.
Months or years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. And I feel like I've been seeing more of that on social media lately. And so I just wanted to ask the question. And I had to look up how to say it properly, too. So I'll admit that to the world.
Well, on that note, I think we're going to go ahead and stop right here and end part 1. We have so much more to discuss, so we will definitely be back for part 2, where we're going to talk about hormones and weight loss and menopause, perimenopause, all that fun stuff. So make sure you tune back in for part 2 with Teneika Gravely. And thank you all for listening as always. Thanks for tuning in to Momming as a Millennial. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with a friend or on social. You can find more from me at contemplativemama.com. Until next time.